This coming weekend, we celebrate All Saints' Day, and I'd like to say a few words about that and offer a blessing for all of us who grieve. Stay tuned. Hello, friends. Pastor Tim Westermeyer here, Senior Pastor of St. Philip the Deacon in the western suburbs of Minneapolis. Good to be with you as always. I was just chatting with Tim behind the camera about last week's Faith and Life series event with Reverend Mark Birch from Westminster Abbey. It was a wonderful talk, and last week's episode was actually kicking that off, but I'll mention just at the outset here that if you want to listen to that talk in its entirety, we'll provide a link to that here. What I have on my mind today, though, is actually this upcoming weekend, and I suppose here at St. Philip we have services both on Saturday and Sunday, but this coming Sunday is the celebration of All Saints Sunday, which in the church year is an opportunity for us to gather together and remember those who have gone before us, the great cloud of witnesses, and those dear to us, those who we have lost and whose deaths we mourn, whether those deaths are from a long time ago or whether they are more recent. In the services this weekend, and many churches do this, we will do this as well, we will actually name those individuals who have died in the past year since last All Saints. So in a way, our attention is focused on the past year, but again, it's much broader than that in the sense that as people of faith, we recognize that despite being people filled with hope because of the resurrection, in this lifetime there is indeed pain and grief and difficulty as it relates to the death of those who we love. I talk in this place and in my preaching actually quite frequently about sort of putting up against the cultural assumptions that we live in. It happens to be here in the United States for me, and I suppose for many of the people listening. So comparing the cultural assumptions with the assumptions of or the perspective of faith. And as it relates to grief, and I'm happy to be challenged on this if you want to push back or if you disagree, that's fine. But as it relates to grief, I think the cultural assumptions are that we don't want to talk about it, that we don't want to deal with it, that we don't want to acknowledge it, that we want to say, oh, did someone in your family or a dear friend or whatever die? You have a day or two and then you should be able to get over it, right? I think grief, and those of you who have experienced grief know that grief is far, far, far more complex than that, more deep-rooted. And whatever else we do on All Saints, we are acknowledging and remembering and honoring maybe that pain, which is simply another way of saying we recognize the love that we have for people who are no longer with us. And yes, of course, through the lens of faith, we always look ahead to the joy and the hope and the promise of the resurrection, but that does not take away the sting of death as we experience it in this lifetime. So I just wanted to say a word about that, invite you to be with us on Sunday. If you can be with us, as always, in person to remember those who have died, fabulous. If you can join us digitally, that's fine as well. If you are here in person, we will also, outside of worship, have some resources available for either thinking about grief or even planning things related to future grief, namely, for example, thinking about your own funeral planning. That's not maybe directly connected to All Saints, but it's related certainly. So we have scripture passages for times of grieving. We have a lovely candle lighting ceremony to help address and reflect and think about those you've loved. We have, again, forms about preferences for your own funeral services in the future and so forth. So I just wanted to mention those will be available this coming weekend. And maybe in closing, I have a whole lot of prayers and blessings here that I'm sitting with as I think about my message for this coming weekend. But I will leave you with one, which is written by a relatively well-known author named Kate Bowler. I don't know if you've heard of her. Maybe we'll link to a book or two of hers. She does have a book or at least one book of blessings. I'm not sure if this is where this blessing comes from, but it is on her website, and maybe we'll link to that as well. So I'll close with this. This is, again, it's by Kate Bowler, and it's a blessing for the day we mourn our dead, in parentheses, All Saints' Day. And here's what she writes. Today we are drawn into remembrance. The complexity of love and loss both warms our hearts and chills our bones. Invisible connections are revealed just as the light of the sun illuminates the lines of a web. We see that our lives are connected to those who are no longer here. Blessed are we who acknowledge the impressions made by those who've passed a child's nose, a joke carried on, a chair left in our name, a story that we now tell. Blessed are you who have learned to make sense of a world that doesn't make sense without them. And blessed are you with grief present still, who carry the weight of surviving a loved one, of keeping the memories and sharing the stories. O God, you alone know the whole of it. You know their sufferings, their joys, their hopes, their winding paths, and every movement of their souls. Restore our souls, even as you receive theirs. Welcome them in with the kind of embrace we wish we could give them. Blessed is the time they were given and the time you now have, whether in life or in death. Love is there. And I pray that if you are grieving this All Saints, that God might bring you comfort and peace. As always, thanks for being with me. Be well, stay in touch, and God bless.